China panicked in Brazil after Trump targeted PCC and CV. Because Beijing's reaction this Friday, May 29, 2026, revealed that the American decision hit much more than just two criminal factions. Marco Rubio, in the Trump administration, put the Primeiro Comando da Capital and the Comando Vermelho on the path to being classified as terrorist organizations by the United States. And China rushed to talk about non-interference, sovereignty, and respect for the internal affairs of other nations. But the declared target of Washington was not Brazil. The target was factions that grew, became wealthy, crossed borders, and began to threaten regional security. What does Beijing want to protect? Why did China react so quickly? How will Lula explain this discomfort when Trump targeted organized crime? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward, no-nonsense content, consider subscribing, because here we have videos like this every day. The Chinese reaction came from China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Spokesperson Mao Ning stated that Beijing upholds the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of other nations after being questioned about the United States' decision against the PCC and CV. The phrase seems common in diplomacy, but the timing is significant. China did not address the issue to talk about the victims, about money laundering, trafficking routes, or violence against police officers. She chose to talk about sovereignty precisely when Washington decided to target the financial and international operations of these organizations. The decision by the United States was announced on May 28, 2026. The State Department announced that PCC and CV will be treated as foreign terrorist organizations starting June 5. Before that, both factions are already listed as specially designated global terrorists. In practice, this kind of measure increases the risk for anyone who moves money, facilitates transactions, helps support networks, or maintains any connection with these groups. Trump didn't just give speeches, he put real pressure on the faction's finances, logistics, and international contacts. Marco Rubio justified the measure by saying that PCC and CV are among the most violent criminal organizations in Brazil. With thousands of members, attacks against police and civilian authorities, as well as illicit networks that go beyond Brazilian territory. This point explains the nervousness in Brasilia and Beijing. The Brazilian government had already been trying to avoid this classification. The concern in the Planalto was that the terrorism label would open the door for tougher measures from the United States against people, companies, banks, or structures directly or indirectly linked to these networks. Celso Amorim tried to set limits on the issue by saying that cooperation against money laundering and arms trafficking is acceptable, but that any pretext for intervention would be unacceptable. Instead of celebrating an offensive against factions, the government rushed to raise a political barrier against Trump. That's where China comes in. Beijing saw the chance to hand Lula the narrative that the Workers' Party likes the most, that Brazil is being threatened by a foreign power. But this interpretation hides the central fact. Trump did not classify Brazil as a threat. Trump targeted the PCC and the CV. The left tries to mix the two things because it needs to turn pressure against criminals into an attack on national sovereignty. This maneuver shifts the focus away from the gangs and shifts the discussion into the ideological arena. China benefits from this reaction because it presents itself as Brazil's defender against Washington, reinforces its image as a partner of the Global South, and creates a contrast with the United States. But there's nothing innocent about this move. Brazil is strategic for Beijing in agriculture, minerals, energy, ports, technology, infrastructure, and in the BRICS. In 2025, trade between Brazil and China reached $171 billion, with China accounting for 27.2% of Brazil's trade flow. Those who have that kind of influence don't react out of kindness, they react out of self-interest. Mauro Vieira's visit to China adds even more political weight to the case. The Brazilian foreign minister has meetings in Beijing from May 31 to June 2, 2026 at the invitation of Wang Yi for a new round of comprehensive strategic dialogue between Brazil and China. The coincidence is striking. Trump is pressuring the PCC and CV. Rubio is putting Brazilian organized crime in the international spotlight. And Lula's foreign minister is traveling to Beijing precisely when China is offering the rhetoric of non-interference. The Chinese reaction also reveals the fear of losing ground in Latin America. The Trump administration has been treating cartels, criminal groups, and drug trafficking networks as a national security threat. This approach has already been used against groups like Tren de Aragua and MS-13, and now it's coming to Brazil. For Beijing, this is bad because it increases the United States' presence in a region where China wants to expand its economic and diplomatic influence without facing American oversight over ports, routes, banks, and logistical networks. The most revealing detail is that China did not dispute the history of violence of these factions. It didn't say that PCC and CV are irrelevant groups. It didn't deny that they have international branches. It didn't address the substance of Rubio's accusation. Beijing preferred to attack the American method. This shows that the main concern isn't the description of organized crime. It's the power Trump gains by framing these networks as a global threat. Lula is in a difficult situation. China's reaction does not weaken Trump. It shows that Trump applied pressure in the right place. The PT narrative tries to sell the case as a risk of intervention. But the average Brazilian sees criminal groups dominating territories, expanding their influence, moving money, threatening authorities, and crossing borders. When a major power decides to treat this as an international threat, the natural response of a serious government should be firm cooperation with national control and practical results. The problem is that the PT prefers to turn the issue into a platform against Trump. This stance also exposes an old contradiction. Lula's government accepts China's presence in trade, infrastructure, diplomacy, and international forums as a strategic partnership. But when the United States gets involved in security issues to pressure criminal groups, the Planalto sounds the sovereignty alarm. The difference in treatment shows that the word sovereignty often becomes a tool. It serves to block Washington, but rarely appears with the same strength when Beijing expands its influence in Brazil. China knows that the word terrorism changes the game. Banks start taking a closer look. Companies avoid risk, intermediaries become exposed, authorities need to respond, and international partners demand explanations. That's the reason for the diplomatic panic. It's not just a war of words. It's the possibility of Brazilian organized crime being treated as part of a global network with consequences beyond the political reach of the Planalto. The next chapter will be about money and diplomacy. The classification takes effect on June 5th, and from then on, any financial connection with these criminal groups is likely to generate more fear, more tracking, and higher costs. Meanwhile, Lula will have Mauro Vieira in Beijing, China will be talking about non-interference, and Trump will be using the US state apparatus to target the PCC and CV. I'm Milson Alves, an international relations specialist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed of the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the Milson Alves community.